For a city its size, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania has always had a low crime rate, especially in the suburbs. While most big city police departments are swamped with cases of rape, robbery, and murder, the caseload for the cops in suburbs like Ross Township is decidedly lighter. So in November of 1994, when the cops got a call from paramedics telling them that they had found a woman dead in her own hot tub, they had no reason to suspect foul play.
Our community homicide is a rarity. We might have a homicide every 10 years here.
November 6, 1994 started out like any other Sunday for Tim and Marianne Buskowski. After church, the couple ate a quiet dinner and put the kids to bed. According to Tim, he and his wife watched a movie and then went out to the hot tub to have some drinks. At 12:48 a.m., the phone rang at the home of Susan and Wesley Semple, the Buskowskis' friends and next-door neighbors. It was Tim. He said there was a problem with his wife. Immediately, Wesley Semple rushed over to the Buskowskis' house. In the backyard, Wes found Tim standing next to his hot tub. Below him, in warm, roiling waters, was the lifeless body of his wife, Marianne. Tim told Wes that after a few minutes in the tub, he went upstairs and took a shower. But Marianne stayed in the hot tub and, according to Tim, continued to drink. An hour later, Tim returned to check on his wife. That, Tim told Wesley, is when he discovered her floating face down in the hot tub.
Supposedly they both had some wine before they went into the hot tub. And the glasses were sitting outside by the hot tub. But she was sitting in the hot tub. Her head was above the water. She was a dead weight.
While Tim was telling Wes Semple what happened to his wife, Wes was trying to pull Marianne from the hot tub. But instead of helping out, Tim made a phone call, not to 911, but to his parents. Unable to lift Marianne out of the hot tub by himself, Wesley Semple waited on Tim for nearly 5 minutes. Then Semple called 911 himself.
I started realizing it's odd. Why was I talking to 911? Why did he call me first? You don't call a neighbor and your parents, then you call for the paramedics.
Moments later, emergency rescuers arrived at the Buskowski home. As the paramedics went to work on Marianne, Tim went inside, changed his clothes, and came back to the hot tub carrying a jug of wine.
The paramedics were out on the deck with her. He runs over to the refrigerator, pulls out a big jug of wine and said, Marianne drank half of this. Then he went to tell also that she drank 13 beers that night. And I just thought that was real strange. Why did he pull out the wine and show everybody that that's what she had been drinking that night?
About the same time the cops showed up, Tim's parents did too. That's when things got truly bizarre.
Tim was in the kitchen and his mother and father walked in. And his mother seemed almost agitated. She seemed angry, and she said to him, "What happened?" And he began to tell her about her drinking. And they had this quarrel. But then they had made up and everything was okay. And then he came back outside a short time later and found her unconscious in the hot tub. And during this discussion, he got very nervous, and he said, "I don't want any of them trying to pin this on me." And she was lying on the deck just a few feet away, and they were attempting to revive her, and he was worrying about if this were going to be pinned on him.
This guy just supposedly went through he found his wife dead in a hot tub. You're supposedly devastated. Not him. Not him. He was cool, calm, and collective. I didn't see any emotion with this guy. I'm like, where's the tears? Where's the devastation here? It's not there.
After talking to Tim, Waters decided to check out the hot tub where Marianne had supposedly drowned. Like Tim Buskowski, it too seemed a little off.
Inside the hot tub, her glasses were on the bottom. Her hair tie, girls get in these hot tubs, they put their hair up. That's floating. The thermometer for the hot tub is broken in half. There was a white handkerchief in the hot tub. That definitely arose suspicion there.
And those suspicions were aroused even further when homicide detectives learned of the autopsy report from the Allegheny County Coroner's Office.
This girl had trauma to the head, to the back, her legs, and her legs were all black and blue. There was internal trauma to the top of the head, a lot of trauma around the neck from strangulation when he was trying to kill her.
But none of the physical evidence was as compelling as a bit of circumstantial evidence the cops got from Tim Buskowski's own father.
All the hustle and bustle with the paramedics had just sort of subsided, and I said something like, what a shame that these 3 children are upstairs, and in the morning they're going to find out probably that their mother has passed away. And the neighbor said to me, well, those are not her children. She was their stepmother. And at that point, the father said, their mother's deceased. And we said, well, when did that happen? And he got very nervous and sort of agitated. And he said, well, she died under similar circumstances.
The cops let Tim Buskowski go home for the time being. They needed a few days to sort through all the evidence before they officially charged Tim with murder. While prosecutors were getting all their ducks in a row, Tim Buskowski remained a free man. He kept a pretty low profile, until Mary Ann's funeral, that is.
He rode in the limousine with Pat and Lou and John, Mary Ann's parents and brother. Tim sang every song. He never missed a word on all the prayers. He was a very, very dutiful Catholic that day, which was a very hard thing to be under those circumstances, but he managed to do it. By that time, we all believed that he had murdered Mary Ann.
While Tim was playing up his good Catholic boy shtick, the Allegheny County DA's office was busy prepping their case against him. On November 15th, the DA doled out the indictment, officially charging Tim Buskowski with first-degree murder. But then, just 2 days after Tim was indicted up in Pittsburgh, news came from North Carolina. The Guilford County DA had learned of the indictment in Pittsburgh and reopened the investigation into the death of Tim's first wife, Elaine. 2 days later, prosecutors charged Tim Buskowski with a second count of first-degree murder. News that homegrown resident Tim Buskowski had been charged with killing both of his wives ripped through the Iron City like Jerome Bettis on Third Down and Short.
It definitely shocked me. I never thought I'd know a murderer. You know, I used to have this man over to my home. I used to send my kids over there with him. He used to come up to our cottage and spend the weekend with us. I had my kids around this murderer. I never thought in a million years I'd ever meet anyone that was a murderer.
On October 21st, 1996, the state versus Tim Buskowski for the murder of his first wife, Elaine, was scheduled to begin. And as Tim Buskowski headed south, so did his luck. In a 180-degree decision the other way, the judge in North Carolina ruled that the details of Mary Ann's death could be admitted as circumstantial evidence in Elaine's murder case. With the similarities between Mary Ann and Elaine's deaths laid out for the jury to see, their verdict came quick. On November 1st, 1996, they found Tim Buskowski guilty of first-degree murder. They sentenced him to life in prison. But he didn't stay locked up in Carolina very long. Buskowski was shackled up and put onto a plane bound for Pittsburgh. The jury in Pittsburgh ruled the same way their counterparts in Greensboro had. On May 6, 1999, they found Tim Buskowski guilty of first-degree murder. After reading the verdict, the court adjourned to decide whether Tim should get life in prison or the death penalty.
They
promised us that they would put a motion aside and make a decision based on the evidence.
I don't think he deserves the right to walk the face of this earth ever again.
The next morning, Tim Boskowski was sentenced to death by lethal injection.
He got exactly what he deserved. In my eyes, he's a cold-blooded killer, and he took away 2 lives and he affected so many other lives, you know, the families, the friends, the children.
Today, Tim Boskowski sits on death row in a maximum security facility in Waynesburg, Pennsylvania.
You know, what goes around comes around, and it caught up to him. You know, this guy's killed the first one. He walked the streets for 4 years, laughing at the system, and he thought he was smart enough to kill the second one and get away with it. But just didn't work out that way this time.
His attorneys are still appealing his case, and Tim Boskowski still maintains his innocence. Justice in Tim Boskowski's case does have its downside. The 3 children were left parentless, out 2 mothers and a father.
I feel bad for them. They're good kids, you know, and Mary Ann loved those kids more than anything, and I think she's watching over them now. I really do.